This is going to be a compilation video on all 5 of the previous ones that I had made on learning to stuff the front tire into an obstacle and then static zap up to the back tire. I'm going to be comparing my form to some pro riders and understand what's really important in order to gain this technique. Now, this is going to be a longer one, so sit back, enjoy. Here we go. I'm going to talk you through the breakthrough moments that I had learning to stuff and static zap.
Yes!
As you guys know, I like to document the different things that I'm learning, and today I really committed to trying to learn to stuff and static zap. So for this one, I'm going to start out just by saying you got to practice just balancing. Screw even trying to get up, man. It's just about learning to balance up there. So slipping the clutch, stuffing that front wheel in is going to give you more traction, help you be able to do that. Now, when it is time to go ahead and try and push that front wheel up onto there, it really helps to bend those knees. So you can see right here, bracing for that impact and then letting my body move into it. Now, when it's time to try and get the momentum and then build up the RPM, this one is just a challenge. I really struggle with this. And so at one point I said, you know what? I need to see when I'm supposed to be popping the clutch. So I rely on the master. Here's Pat Smodgy showing you how it's done. I wound up putting a little insert right when he's popping the clutch right there. And I also reached out to a friend and said, hey, talk me through this, man. I really need some help. So Sean McGinnis helped me out, making a private video just for me, demonstrating it and also talking me through some tips.
Time for a little update. First thing is when you're pushing into this, bend your knees right there. Knees go towards the front axle. That'll help you get stabilized. Second thing is that I need a stronger pull, and I got to get my foot off that rear brake. I was trying to do it with the foot on the rear brake. That definitely doesn't work. So clutch slip.
This is definitely not a how-to. As you guys know, I just enjoy documenting the process and talking through the things that I'm learning because that's what this channel is all about, trials progression. So here we go, trying it again in a later session on this wall, just a little bit more of a vertical face. I'm getting some pop, but I'm still just not committing. And honestly, I spend more time just trying to balance. So I say, man, I'm getting fatigued. I'm just gonna give it a bunch of gas. Give it some gusto. Let's just really rev this thing up and commit. And that's helping for sure.
Rev, pull hard and wait. Wait to pop. Rev.
So I did find that when I revved higher, I was pulling harder.
Yes! All right, so in order to get better at stuffs, I decided I'm going to intentionally practice just balancing, just stuffing into the wall. So foot on the rear brake, I'm going to go ahead and go right into this wall. I am going to slip the clutch right away as I get up on here, because when you're pushing that front tire and slipping that clutch, it definitely makes it a lot easier. So my buddy Ron's like, you'll get it, you're just not leaning forward enough, you're not getting it right in place. And I'm starting to feel the difference now. As I'm keeping that front brake on, stuffing the engine in there, I'm definitely getting a lot more pressure. It's a lot easier to balance, less corrections are need to be made. So watch when I pull the clutch in a little bit, you can see the bike sit down a little bit more as opposed to press up into it. So we'll try this just rear brake and front brake, no clutch at all, no slipping. So it's a little bit more wobbly, but I'm starting to get the feel for it better. Although when I'm making corrections, it definitely feels weird. So if I slip that clutch and press into it, now no rear brake, and I don't even have to make corrections because it's like the bike's just so much more stable, it's more planted.
So let's pause for a moment and talk about this because the front tire contact patch increases as I'm slipping the clutch and pressing into it. There's more friction on the front tire, which increases the tension in the system. Less corrections are needed, and it's so much easier to balance.
All right, so I'm intentionally going to try some with the front wheel too high and then bring it back down. So still foot on the rear brake and slipping clutch into it. The key for this high on the front wheel is definitely going to be to stand up a little bit more straight. So I'm off the rear brake now. And I was leaning back more. I was just getting so fatigued. No forearm just burning up in this position. So we'll see if I can get a little bit lower here. Ah! So that feels pretty good. I think what we're looking for is the wheel contact patch to be horizontal from the axle. So I'll try and go even just a touch lower, which I'm doing by little impulses on the brakes. Oh, too low! Ah! So that's the contact patch, almost at the second timber down from the top. Let's try it with the engine off. Rear brake on, push down on the front and really jam it in there. That feels pretty stable. I'm getting better at this. I definitely think it helps to practice intentionally trying to stuff into an obstacle and just work on that. Just concentrate on balancing here, because when I had the pressure of, okay, as soon as I am balanced, I'm gonna go ahead and rev up the engine, try and jump up there. It was just like my brain was overloaded with too much stuff to work on. It's like as soon as I got the balance part, then I had to do something else. Whereas right now, I'm actually happy that I'm able to balance without the engine. And I'm feeling like, okay, this is getting a little bit more normal, a little more natural. So just taking a little bit off the front brake in order to come down a little bit. That's feeling pretty good too. And even lower. Oh, it's getting a little bit squirrely as I make corrections with the bars. So definitely good to experiment here. I think from that angle, you can probably see when I'm taking my foot off the rear brake as well. So I'm just gonna practice, go ahead and put the foot back on the rear brake, let off of the stuffing effect with the engine, what it's like to balance there versus when I'm actually driving into the obstacle by slipping the clutch. Man, when you continue to push into that obstacle, I'm trying to push it over right now. I feel like I'm tractoring, but it's just so stable. Like, I feel like I can probably lift up a foot. Yep. So I might be able to change gears if I needed to. Maybe not, but just definitely experiencing the difference here. And we'll try and cover that brake, let off the clutch slip. Even this is starting to feel a little more natural. Let's try and go down just a touch. There we go. And then drive in. Don't want to forget to hold on to that front brake.
Now, if you're new to the channel, I do like to break things down into smaller drills. So click on that description where you can see a list of all the different ways that I experimented today in order to get better at this balancing. I am going to progress this out into a 7 days to stuff with a lot of additional content on different aspects of this skill, because I think there's so much to say about this. In addition to that, I have learned a lot of different techniques because I'm trying to learn them in order. It's easier. So I've been spending a lot of time practicing static balance. I've worked on clutch slip. I've worked on zaps and splats and dropping the clutch when the RPM is high. And it's that progression of learning skills in order that allows me to learn this skill pretty quick. Today I want to go over 3 key aspects before jumping the bike up onto that obstacle, because I want to build a solid foundation before actually trying to include the jump. So wheeling into the face, adjusting the height of the front wheel, and what to do with my hips before it's actually time to jump. Now, I'm not setting the front wheel down onto the obstacle. I'm actually driving into it or even catching it on the way up. When I impact, I'm going to be hard on both brakes, and I'm going to allow my body to actually kind of go forward to absorb that impact. So you can see my knees are actually going down towards that front axle in order to not kind of rebound off the wall. This is really important because it's hard to gain balance once you bounce off of this. So you want to allow your body to kind of absorb it, but keep your core tight. Now, once I'm stuffed into the obstacle, my front wheel may be too high. So in order to bring it back down, I'm just going to be releasing that front brake. In doing so, the wheel is going to come down slightly, but then I also might have to lift it higher up. So I'm going to actually slip the clutch and then also release that front brake, just kind of impulse a little bit in order to go up and down. And this is actually a great drill. Intentionally practice lifting that front wheel higher and bringing it back down so you get comfortable with it. We're not trying to jump it all yet. We're just making sure we feel confident with what we're doing on the bike before it's time to add in the next element. So the last thing I'm going to work on is taking my foot off of the rear brake, and in doing so, I'm going to be slipping the clutch and driving the bike into that face. That's going to give me so much stability. So I'm going to practice just bringing my hips back and then forward. And this is actually something you don't want to be losing your balance doing when it's time to jump the bike. So we're just practicing bringing the hips back and forward and up. Now, some of the pro riders are doing this to an extreme example. They're getting way back on the bike, and in order to get that pop or that lift off, we can bring our hips forward with our knees still bent and then start to move up. So the hips are going to come forward and then up. You guys can see the bike is already potentially wanting to take off in this maneuver. Now here I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you guys get the idea. This is a good thing to practice before it's actually time to jump. Now putting all these different things together, I'm actually going to wheelie into the face, regain my balance, lower the wheel a little bit, and then jump over. Now this is still a fairly small obstacle. This is my current skill level. I'm just sharing with you guys what I'm doing as I'm doing it, as I'm learning this. And I set a goal to learn to stuff and get up my wall with a cheater rack in 7 days. Now it's hard to produce and edit these videos as quickly as and get them out to you, but I do think this is going to be a helpful series, especially if you're learning to do it. In the next video, we're going to be talking all about revving up the engine, jumping and popping that clutch so you can get over a log and not land on it. 7 days to stuff. It's finally time to jump the bike up there. We're going to be talking about rev, pull, jump, and pop. But before we do, I want to encourage you, if you haven't seen the previous videos, to check out the playlist that I'm going to attach here. It's going to talk all about balance as well as getting your body into the right position, because we want to be safe. If this is something you're not familiar with doing, popping the clutch, I would encourage you to watch a clutch control video that I have in the description, as well as the Rev Squat Go portion of a video called The Long Road to Splats. I spend time talking about how to get comfortable revving up the bike and releasing the clutch, because that's going to be paramount in what we're about to do. Now, if you haven't done any zaps or splats before, I would say those might be prerequisite skills. Not necessarily, but I learned those before I learned this, and it gave me a lot of confidence. I would also say that wheelie control is really important, because potentially you're going to be jumping the back tire up to the top of the obstacle and holding pressure. You want to be comfortable slipping the clutch, knowing how to find the rear brake. If you haven't seen the video I made on rear brake on the obstacle, I would encourage you to do that. So I've broken this down into 4 key aspects of what we're going to do: revving up the bike, pulling on the handlebars, jumping up there, and popping the clutch. Now, underneath it, if you guys can tell, I'm trying to make a foundation here, and that's balance. You want to be balanced. If you're not stable as you're trying to move into this aggressive type move, it can go sideways pretty quick. So I would encourage balance and working on the previous things that I talked about in the video, and then also timing. If you don't have timing with your clutch release as you're standing, that's something you can practice. So here I'm going to go ahead and include a few ways to practice just on the flat ground in a safe environment. I don't want to title this a how-to video, because I'm still learning this. I'm just documenting the process and thinking through what I would do to break this down for myself as well as somebody else, so that you guys can learn faster. That's what this channel is all about: trials, progression for me as well as for you, the viewing audience. And so at this point, if this is adding value, I would ask you to hit the like button. That's a way you can tell YouTube and the algorithm that this is a helpful video, so other people can find it as well. So as I start to move my hips back, I like to rev the bike, and I'm going to be doing this potentially to about 1/3 or even 1/2. It depends on the size of the obstacle, and I would encourage you to start small. So on this starter pallet wall, I'm just revving the bike up to maybe 1/3. Then I'm going to be pulling hard on the bars. This is what's going to take a lot of commitment. I'm going to be pulling in on those handlebars, and to get a feel for exactly what this should look like, you guys can do a drill in your house. But when you're pulling in on the handlebars, it is going to take a lot of commitment. You guys can do a lot of half-hearted efforts in a safe way. It's not going to be a problem if you land on the bash plate or you don't get all the way up. So until you start revving up that bike higher and you start committing with a harder pull, you're not going to see the results. And it takes more effort than what you realize. So at some point, you're going to be halfway, and you're going to get frustrated and say, I just want to get this. And you're going to give it a bunch of gusto. Hopefully at that point, you've got all these other aspects in place so you can get up there safely. But it's going to take a lot of commitment and forward momentum. That's what we're trying to generate with our torso and our hips going from back to forward. We're trying to move our body so that as we release the clutch and the bike starts moving, we are moving with it. In some ways, you can kind of see where the body is moving first, then the bike is moving faster past it, and then the body is on the back wheel right there and hopefully moving up together. So there's some physics involved to this, I'm sure, but I'm not going to get into it. The next part I want to talk about is the jump. So it actually helped me a ton just to go ahead and step off the bike and try and jump up to the obstacle with no bike. That's the effort that I needed to put in. And I realized one thing: as I was jumping up there, the bike is going to assist in that forward momentum, but in order to jump up there, I had to get my head slightly in front of my ankles. You know, you think about jumping and you have to be leaning forward in order to go up and forward. So it makes sense, if you look at this body posture, that you've got to be leaning forward as you jump. Well, the same thing applies on the bike. If you are simply jumping straight up and down and the bike's moving forward, you're going to be landing on the back wheel, if even getting up to the obstacle. So you're going to have to lean forward as you're jumping, which means that your knees are going to come slightly in front of your toes, or your hips are going to be even or even in front of your ankles. So what I would say is that you're leaning slightly forward as you're jumping. Think about maybe getting your toes down a little bit as you're jumping, and that your head is even with the handlebars. So when we talk about timing this clutch pop, I found it actually helps a little bit. Sean helped me with this one. If you look down a little bit, when your head is even with those handlebars is when you want to be popping the clutch. So as you're moving forward and jumping, your head is about even with the handlebars as you're popping the clutch. That means you're potentially about 60 to 90% through with your jump. You want to be jumping and releasing the clutch so that you're not releasing the clutch at the bottom, the bike's trying to go up and you're still pushing down. You want to have released a lot of the load off of the bike so that when you pop the clutch, it's able to jump up to the obstacle. These are the few of the key points that I found were really helpful for me. I wanted to organize my thoughts because a lot of times when I make these videos, I'm just going off of what I just learned. So I took some time to write it all out. Hopefully that's beneficial for you guys. I am a little bit dressed up because it's fall. We're going to take some family pictures, and I thought I can probably record a video real quick. So happy fall to you guys. Hopefully you're out enjoying the great weather and riding and having fun. Don't forget to hit that like button. I sure appreciate the support on the channel.
Oh, gosh!
Well, this video makes the final in a series on stuff to stationary zap. I finally made it up the big wall that I've been working towards, and I want to share with you some final thoughts as it relates to this skill. If you missed the previous videos, I've got a playlist on how I learned to accomplish this skill over the course of a week. In addition to that, if you're new to the channel, I'm a manager coach by day, and I'm learning trial skills at night. I'm breaking down the process of learning these skills and putting them into drills in order to learn faster, as well as to help you do the same. I'm going to share some of my thoughts on developing this skill, as well as things that can be applicable to other skills as well. And the foundation of it is just going to be dedication. I have put together a lot of time and energy and practice into this skill, and my commitment towards growing in trials is definitely evident, as you guys can see if you look back through the channel. In addition to that, on the foundation are some different skills. I think about things like clutch control, revving up the engine, popping the clutch, learning wheelie control, brake control. Those are all previous videos that I've done, and it's something that I have developed, and it's enabled me to set forth a goal like this to accomplish this in 7 days. So that's going to be number one, setting goals for yourself, especially training goals, things that you want to accomplish, not necessarily competition goals, has been a huge factor. I said I wanted to get up this wall inside of a week. I put together trying to do a video each day, but it was hard to edit these and get them all uploaded, so this is going to be the last in this series. And if you haven't already seen this playlist, I'll go ahead and include a link here because there's a lot more that I started with that I'm now kind of putting the capstone on, so to speak. Now, one of the main things that I had done was study what good technique looks like. And when I compared myself to Pat Smodgy, best rider in the US, I saw that his hips were going way further back in order to preload and get ready for that suspension, that takeoff. He's bringing his torso from back to forward in order to then create lift and momentum with his body going up the obstacle. Now, when I talked to Adam about that, he specifically said, well, he's going after huge obstacles. He's using that technique because he's riding up like 5-foot ledges. And that makes a lot of sense. So even when he's doing a smaller obstacle, he's still using that technique to bring his hips from way back to way forward. But I'm not going after that big of an obstacle. In addition to that, if you look at other riders, here's Jaime Bestow. His hips just seem to drop down and up, down and up. He's not going back nearly that far. The next one's going to be practice, and because I have this obstacle so close to my house, I've been able to go out almost every single day in order to develop this skill. I put in a lot of time and energy. Now, I was practicing primarily alone, and then at the last event, I was able to get into an environment which really shifted things. And what I mean by that is when you're with other riders, when you're with better riders, when you're in a group environment, when you run with horses, you tend to go faster. I think about sled dogs and being able to get there together because everyone's pulling together. A rising tide lifts all boats. There's something about cultures that develop, like the Olympic Training Center, a Mecca, a place, the Trials Training Center. When you get around specific environments, man, the movement is just contagious as it relates to progression. I think some of that is because you're with better riders and they're giving you insight, and also because you have courage. You see other people doing things and you think, I can do that too, I want to do that too. And if you kind of strip away that fear and just go for it, even if you don't make it, they're there to support you. And the last one's going to be feedback. I specifically sought out Adam Bloomhorst, who is now a friend of mine. He was a minder for a pro rider, Will Myers, and I said, hey, I want to get better at stuffs. Can you come over and help me work on this? So as I went over to that area, I started working on stuff. Some of the other guys started working on stuff. They were doing zaps and splats and all kinds of things. But he specifically said, no, you need to be lower. You need to be lower. And he saw I was trying to get it on this log that was a little bit higher. And he said, okay, let's back up. Let's just get 10 perfect on this smaller log and really establish that pattern, develop that muscle memory, be able to do that consistently before we move up. So I went back down here, gave it a bunch of attempts. He was giving me a little insight, more RPM, get lower, your jump's not right. It was just those little things that I needed to focus on that really helped me channel what it was that I needed to work on. A lot of times when you have outside perspective, it really makes a difference. Then I went ahead and moved up to the higher part of that log, and as you guys can see, some of the people that were there before have now moved on. This jam session was over. There was a few people sitting around the campfire that were still watching me, and when I finally got up this log, you can hear them cheering me on and saying, way to go, because I put in a lot of effort towards this, and although it was a trials event, I still had some energy left, and I wanted to give it a go. And watching Corey next to me, who actually sat down on the airbox and then just stood up. He just stood straight up, and he was able to make it off the large size log that's right here. I thought, man, maybe I don't need to focus as much on this aspect of that technique as others. And so as I learned, this was more about giving it a commitment, good solid jump, getting the front wheel lower, as well as revving up that engine even higher and further in order to generate the pop that I needed to get the bike up there. I know for me, sometimes seeing what good looks like in other riders can help me know what I need to work on. And if you're only tuning into one particular coach or my channel alone or someone else, that's great, but it's the community, it's the perspective of a lot of people that really makes the difference. I like to listen to every single coach that I can and glean wisdom from everyone. I say, eat the meat, spit out the bones. If there's something you don't like about what that teacher's saying, don't worry about it. Just listen to all the teachers, take in as much as you can, have the humility to just feed on everyone's advice, take it all in, and then figure out what works best for you. So in this situation, I just needed to give it those aspects and not so much worry about my hips. And now I was able to go up this log. I'm really happy with the progress that I've made. If you guys have enjoyed seeing the way that I've taken this skill and broken it down into different parts and even drilled those parts, this is something that I do on a regular basis on this channel as well as for the members of this channel. If you guys are interested in learning more about learning trial skills in order, you can hit the join button down below, or if you're on an iPhone, you will have to join through a browser. My wife even left this note for me. Congrats on stuffing it yesterday.